Hello, everyone. Once again, welcome to my seminar. Um, so, this new format is a bit gonna get a bit getting used to. I usually have two separate screens, so that I have one that I present on and one that I can read comments on. But it seems like Amit doesn't allow me to have multiple sessions recorded in the same time. So I won't be able to do that. It might be a bit lag between reading the comments and as well as talking to you. And Kelvin, you have your request is here. Someone's, I think, this is Miko. I think she's hungry. Oh no. Sorry about that, guys. Give me a few. Give me a minute. Well, I need to feed the cats. Hey, go. Go. Come here. Nah. All right. Sorry about the disruption. All right, all right. We shouldn't. Let's not delay anymore. All right, let's begin. Hi everyone. My name is QJ, and the cat that you see in the picture inside my jacket is Chiro. I'm a level 3 from Malaysia, and this will be the 20th year that I started playing Magic. I've been judging since 2013, and in those many years, I've given and received a huge number of feedback. Through the judge program, I've learned a lot about giving feedback as well as making good use of the feedback that I receive. So I hope that I'll be able to share with you as much as possible what I've learned. Um, Let me quickly go through what we'll be talking about today. So, firstly, we're going to talk about what is feedback. We're going to explore what type of feedback we'll be talking about, and then we're going to talk about why you want to give feedback, and then we'll talk about how to give good feedback, and following that, we're going to talk about how to make full use of the feedback that you received. And before we wrap things up, we talk about some examples to better understand the concept that we just talked about, and we'll finish off the seminar with a question and answer session. Let's get right into it. There are many technical definitions for feedback, but what we're talking about today is feedback in the form of information, statements of opinions about someone or something that someone did. But the more important message I want to convey is that feedback is a gift. Just like the gift that Ricardo and me received from Laura Ellis, she gave us some Tim Tams with custom boxes, which actually has our names on it, so which is a really cool gift. Let's just take a quick look at the chat, see if I miss anything. Kevin said, I have a 3-year-old son, I know the feeling. Yeah. Some comments about the cat feeding. Yeah, I'm really sorry about my lack of preparedness of not feeding the cats in advance. All right. So um so what do I mean by feedback is a gift? Let's just go back a bit down the slides. A gift is an object that you're able to give someone else, even if it's intangible, non-physical object, right? Just like any other presents, a gift that is well thought of by the giver, that considers the receiver's feelings, has the potential to make them very happy. And just like any other present, a gift that is poorly thought of, that's a gift that is inconsiderate to the receiver, has the potential to hurt or even upset the receiver. So I hope you can keep these things in mind as we further explore and discuss about giving and receiving feedback. Wait, chat, right? So why do you want to give feedback? Because it is in your benefit to give feedback. Yeah, it is in your benefit to give feedback. Before we get into why it is in your benefit to give feedback, I'm going to ask a few yes or no questions. I'm going to send a yes or no question, a poll to your client. Please get ready to answer. It's going to be a yes or no question, and I won't know what answer you choose. So there's no judgment. I won't be able to know what you voted for. unless everyone votes for the same thing, then 100% then I know whoever's here voted for that thing. But unless everyone votes for the same answer, I won't know. So vote away. Don't worry about it. The first question I have is this a good reason for you to give feedback? Number one, it is part of my job or my role at work. Is this a good reason to give feedback? Yes or no? And I'm gonna send out the vote right now. So all I can see right now is the percentages, and I'm gonna have a sip of coffee while I wait for some answers. I have a big percentage of people who voted for yes, a small percentage of people who voted for no. So again, the question is this a good reason to give feedback? Number one, is part of my job or role at work. A majority of you answered yes, and I also personally feel that yes, it is in your benefit because at work or any other form of professional capacity, sometimes you're given the responsibility to mentor and teach others. So giving feedback is going to be a really big part of it. So yes, by carrying out your responsibility, it is in your benefit to give feedback. I have a new question. I'm going to start a new vote. Start a new vote, but don't vote yet. I'm going to ask whether or not this is a good reason for you to give feedback. Number two, I want to get judge foils at for attending a conference. Yes or no? Is this a good reason to give feedback? I want to get judge foils for attending an online conference. Yes or no? Is this a good reason? Like I said, I won't know. I won't know who voted for what. All I see is numbers. I see like right now it's a 70% yes, 30% no. Go. See, say this is why I become a judge in the first place. Yeah. So was I really actually. I'll admit that as well. Like yeah, it's like there's a reason why I become a judge in the first place. That 8 years ago. Yeah. So in my opinion, I think it is fine. It's a good reason to give feedback. There's nothing wrong with that because you are fulfilling a social obligation, right? You're in some sort of social situation where it's expected of you to give feedback, such as attending a judge conference or you're participating in a research survey that you agreed to participate on. It's like I think it's a good, fine and good reason to be giving feedback. And listen, I'm gonna two last questions, quick ones on whether or not it's a good reason to give feedback. The new one, number three, um, I hated something and I wanted them to know. Is this a good reason to give feedback? I'm just gonna very quickly for this one. We have a very overwhelming number, yes, and uh, all right, 92% to 8%. Now, new one, a new situation. I really like this person. I want them to get better. Yes or no? Is this a good reason to give feedback? This seems to be an overwhelming 100%. Oh no, okay. It's like, I really like this person and I want them to get better. Is this a good reason to give feedback? And this is a pretty overwhelming yes. So I, if you haven't figured it out by now, I also think that this is a good reason to give feedback because you want to give feedback out of your own personal desire, right? And you want to give feedback because you want to do so. Maybe you have bad experience and you really want the people involved to know, or you really care about someone and you really like to see that person do better in what they do. So these are the motivations that you can have to give feedback. Now, why do I point these things out? While the feedback is usually about the other person, the act of giving feedback is something you yourself have to do. Right? You wanted to do that. So some people might have the impression that giving feedback is purely for the sake of the other person. I brought these points up because I wanted to emphasize that you should remember that you're also giving feedback for your own sake, right? Whether it's out of a sense of duty, obligation, or simply your own personal desires. Now, why is this important? Giving effective, well constructed feedback is not easy. You need to consider a lot of information. It takes a lot of time and effort, not only to consider all sorts of information, but also time and information to get the information you want, and then to be able to convey the information that you want to tell the other side. Right? Having a clear idea on why you want to invest that time and effort to give feedback will properly motivate you to give good quality feedback. Right? So let's move on to how to give good feedback. There's generally two types of feedback. Like in very broad terms, right? There's two types of feedback. One is the face-to-face verbal feedback, where you talk to that person and there's a lot of back and forth. And the other type is the indirect feedback, which is very likely what the big bulk of the feedback I will be receiving today. Hopefully, please write feedback for me, is the type of feedback where it is a one-way communication, where there's it's indirect feedback. You just someone say something and then it reaches the other person, and that's it, one way. So compare back to back, face to face, direct feedback, and then there's indirect feedback where it's just a single direction. Face to face feedback can be the most constructive, right? Because you can have back and forth conversation to find the best constructive use of each other's time when one person is giving feedback. However, it is very easy to get into conflicts. Right? This is if it's not done carefully, you might be invite conflicts might happen, which is a very good reason why you would definitely want to check out Ivan's seminar later today about conflict management, because sometimes conflicts is unavoidable. So make sure you watch the Ivan's one later. So the advertisement is done. So back to my point. Right. Conflict is easily happen in if you're not done carefully, because especially if you're talking about negative feedback, right? This is largely the reason why a lot of people dread giving feedback in person. You don't want to give feedback in face to face, because especially in our Asian culture, where we want to avoid being confrontational and being direct as much as possible sometimes for some people. So giving feedback, especially giving negative feedback, can give both sides an interaction that feels confrontational and feels uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to be that way. The other type of feedback is indirect feedback. I keep trying to change the slide on this side, so it's not working. If you see me lagging for a few seconds, that's probably why, because I was trying to change the slide in the wrong page. So the other type of feedback is indirect feedback, as we talked about earlier, very briefly. So let's just move on straight away to talking about how what's the best way to go about giving direct feedback, aka face-to-face feedback with back and forth communication. Before anything else, the first thing you should do is ask for permission, ask for consent. It's important to do this because something like something simple is enough. Like, do you have a few minutes? Can I give you some feedback? Is suitable. It's appropriate. This is important for several reasons, right? Number one, it makes it feel less of an ambush, less of a surprise, especially if you have something negative to say. Giving the other person a heads up before giving feedback can help lessen the surprise and let them brace themselves in a sense. Number two, it gives them a chance to say no. The timing that you want to give the feedback might not be a good time for the other person. They might be busy, they might be preoccupied, they might be needed somewhere else at the moment, or they have a pending task that they need to get to. Also consider the possibility that they might not be in the right emotional state to take feedback at the moment. For example, if the feedback that you want to talk about is about a mistake they just made, right? And someone asks you, they know they screwed up and they're still feeling upset about it. So if you come out to him and that person and you want to give feedback about that, it might not be a very good time at all. So these are things that you should keep in mind. On the other hand, if you're on the receiving end of a potential feedback and someone asks you whether or not they can give feedback, remember it's always okay to say no. Right? Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It's okay to say no. If you're in such a position and you want to say no, go ahead, do it. However, However, I would suggest that you offer an alternative, right? A different time later, tomorrow, a different form, email, message, um, some other time. There's some way to get that feedback at a better time later. So once you've that's one way that you make sure that you still get feedback, but um, get feedback at a better time. I'm having. Sorry, or okay. I'm gonna quick yes no question. Is the connection still fine for everyone? I'm having some sorts of pop-ups telling me that the connection is unstable and whatnot. So everything you can still hear me fine. Everything is good. Great. Right. 100% on yes. Great. Thanks. Any cat break? No. After they've been fed, they decided to leave me. To leave me. They only care when they're hungry, right? So just a quick sip of water. Let's move on. Once you got the permission, let's move on to step one. Exchange information. What does this mean? When you want to give feedback, this is usually because you have information that you want to share with the other person, right? Such as information such as your observations, your feelings, your opinions. What you should do when you want to give feedback is to make sure that you talk about facts or observations first, the objective type of information. For example, um, uh, I was observing a new level one take a judge call, right? I watched that person take the call. I saw them ask questions, and then they gave a solution to a problem to the players at the table. And while watching the level one, watching that judge take a call, uh, I have some thoughts and opinions about how the call went, and I want to give feedback to the person. So, step zero, ask for permission. Once I got the okay, I start with the objective information, my observations. So when I see you take that judge call, I was watching you and I saw you do such and such. That's objective information. That's facts. That's something that I've observed, right? Then we move on to I forgot to change slides here. Then we move on to subjective information, your feelings, your opinions that is related to what you mentioned, the more subjective type of information. Like you want to be able to separate these two types of information so that it is better received. So I see some comments. Hang on a minute. The word system does not appear on the phone. I guess not. Thank you, Eric. To be honest, I haven't not been able to test this platform as much as I like to, but it does seem to be the case. Let me just quickly reply. Yep, back to our chat. Okay. Why is separating the objective information and the subjective information important? This helps you ground the information so that you'll be able to give more relevant feedback. Right? You also let the other person know that your feedback comes from somewhere objective. That the source of your feelings and your opinions is not just made up, and that there's a strong basis. There's a basis for it. Um, so like back to the example earlier where I was watching the level one a new judge take a call, and then I want to give feedback to that person, and I started the conversation with, so I saw you do this, and then I saw you do this, and you said this and that, and then I can, once I've established the facts, I can go on and give my opinion or my feelings about that situation, where I say, when you try to get more information from players, for example, I feel that the way that you were trying could be a bit better, and how you should be doing this is so and so. Uh, so this is just an example. We'll go into more detailed examples later, so hopefully it'll be a bit more clearer than right now. Something that you should avoid is don't make sweeping statements like everyone knows that this type of actions is bad, or we all think that this is not a good way to go about it. I personally feel that this is a terrible way to share your opinion. Right? When it's your personal opinion, just emphasize that it is your personal opinion. For one thing, excuse me, you might be mistaken. Like for the second thing, you don't have a right to speak on behalf of everyone. Speak for yourself, right? And number three is you need to sound genuine. You need to sound authentic. And when you emphasize that something is of your own personal opinion or your own personal feelings, I'm more likely to believe you because you're speaking about your own feelings and like who should be the better authority about what you feel other than yourself. See, so this is why I think this is important, and this is why I think that these are the sort of things that you should try and avoid, as well as the things that you should try to do, like the previous slide that we talked about. So we want to be able to compare this information for following sharing the information that you want. So remember that step one is about exchanging information, right? You have information that you want to give the other person. So step two, part of that is comparing it with the information from the other side. Now, when you share your observations, it's also important to let the listener be able to confirm that the events really happened as you described it. As we mentioned slightly earlier, it's possible for you to have been mistaken or you might have misunderstood the actual situation. If your opinions and your feelings is based on misunderstood observations, it's not going to be very helpful for the listener, and definitely and therefore it's not going to be a good use of your time and of the other person's time. And at the same time, as you share your feelings and thoughts about the your observation, try and get the other side's feelings and thoughts as well at the same time. You want to try and understand why did the things they do or behave the way they did. This will help us greatly when we want to move on to the next step, which is to exchange ideas. This is where the feedback process can be constructive, right? If your feedback is about positive, try and share ideas on how to maintain that or make it even better. If your feedback is about something negative, try to suggest solutions to solve that problem or ways that the problem can be avoided in the first place. Once you After exchanging the information in step one, you can make a better suggestion based on the information that you have now, right? This is very constructive if both sides together treats it as a collaborative process. Right? Your suggestions might not be suitable or sometimes not even feasible for reasons that you might not have considered. By going back and forth and brainstorming ideas and solutions, both of you can possibly come up with a better suggestion or solution than the one that you yourself initially walk into the discussion with. Okay? And finally, the step is hopefully by being thoughtful, being considerate, by the end of the discussion, you have found a better understanding of each other. Right? Your goals in the feedback process is number one, you want the other side to be able to understand what was observed from your perspective, and for the other side to understand why you felt a certain way. The second goal is you want to be able to understand why the other person did what they did, why they did what they did, and what were they trying to achieve by doing what they did. And lastly, for both sides to be able to walk away from the interaction with something positive. Yeah. Before we end this section, not the seminar, just this section, not so soon. Before we end this section, I want to emphasize an idea that I've got from a series of articles that Ivan Pikovic wrote. I think a couple of years now, I believe. That like I mentioned earlier, Ivan will be presenting a conference later today, and a lot of the, the basis of how I I have structured the way I think about feedback is based on the things I've learned from him. So I will link to the articles that he wrote later on, and I'll strongly encourage anyone to, if you want to learn more about giving feedback, and receiving feedback, that you give it a read. And one key idea from the series article that I want to share with everyone and I want to emphasize is that you should try to seek to understand before being understood. Right? Trying to understand the other side before you try to get yourself understood is a way of thinking that has led me to a huge personal growth over the years in both my personal and professional life. So I cannot stress this enough. You will find yourself being understood more and be frustrated less when you put this into practice in any form of communication, not just for feedback. Right? It's not going to come easy for some people. It's going to take a lot of practice, and but I wholly recommend it. Remember to try to understand the other side before you try to get the other side to understand you. Uh, And then with that, let's move on to the other type of feedback, which is probably more relevant for a lot of people in right now, especially if you want to get your judge foils. Remember, you need to write a good quality feedback. Indirect feedback is feedback with mostly one-way communication. But before we move on to this part, have you, yes or no, please answer, have you drank water right now? Have you drank water recently? And you should if you have not. Those people who answered no, go get some water right now. Those who just answered no, go get some water. So bossy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. If it takes being bossy to get you to drink water, I'll do it. I'll be on it. Right. It's a bit more coffee. So I'm laughing at some of the chats right now. Supreme Chancellor. Yes, thanks everyone. Make sure you drink that water. And while you're drinking water, let's continue. We'll talk about right now. We're going to talk about indirect feedback. One way feedback. Just like face-to-face feedback, step one is you want to gather information. You want to gather your observations, right? This is so that we can have the resources available to us to carefully select what information we want to provide the other person. We want to be able to convey the points, the ideas that we have to the other side in the best way possible. And to help us do this, we want to be able to gather the information that we want. Step two is to consider the other person's point of view. Um, this is similar in because it's only one way. This is everything has to be done on your side. You want to try to empathize with the other person. Try and think what the other person was thinking. Let's say you observe them doing something and consider why they did that. Why do you think? What were they trying to achieve when they did that particular action or they say that particular thing? And were they successful at doing what you think they were trying to do? Like if I have a goal if I'm trying to make you understand a point, do you think that I conveyed that point clearly? Do you think that it was successful in what I was trying to do? And do you think that it could have been done better, or do you think that it doesn't really work? These are the things that you can try to consider as you're trying to write feedback for the other person. Now, the next step is to make it actionable. Right? We after we consider all that information, give suggestion, give actions, suggest actions that the other person can take. If you didn't like something, suggest what the other person can make you like it more, or at the very least make you dislike it less. If it was something bad, you can suggest that they can take it out altogether. Another example is if you like something and you want to suggest that a person to keep it up, and if you're able to, suggest how to make it better. And finally, after all that effort and consideration, it is pointless if you don't act on it. So just write it. To summarize, one, start by providing the information that you considered. Remember that too much irrelevant information can be distracting, and it makes it less helpful. Right? Too little information makes your opinions and suggestion feels arbitrary, too subjective. So you want to try the subtle sweet spot in the middle. Give enough information to have a basis for the points that you want to make, but uh, not too much, not too little. Number two, write about how you feel about it and what you thought about it. And number three, write and share your suggestions to the other person. And then let's move on to another step. I'm gonna have a quick look at the chat. Many unhealthy drinks. No, currently in commute. Get some water once you're done. All right. Let's talk about how to make full use of the feedback that you receive. Right. We talk about at length on how hard the process of giving feedback can be, and how much time and effort it takes. So, in my opinion, the first step to making good use of feedback received is to realize that feedback does take time and effort. If I actually dislike a person, it is very unlikely for me to want to spend time and effort on that person. That's why giving feedback face to face does not have to be a confrontational process. Right? Instead, it can be a collaborative process with both sides working towards the same goal, the same positive goal. Sometimes what happens is the person who decided to give feedback might not be good at giving feedback, but consider the fact that the person is still willing to spend their time and effort to provide you with feedback. Any sort of feedback can be a valuable resource, even if the observation was in error. In the case of the feedback was based on a wrong or misunderstood observation, we can explore together on why that person could have had the impression of that misunderstood situation in the first place. Right? This is where face-to-face feedback is more effective, because you'll be able to explore the situation together. You can explore the information together and exchange information to be able to come out with the most constructive ideas. While this process can be done in any form of communication, by text, by email, and so forth, being able to process things while number one, the observations are still fresh on the mind, and number two, being able to have the instant back and forth of exchange of information is invaluable. Even if we were talking on Messenger, for example, there's still a bit of a lag in between each person saying sharing what they felt or what they felt or what they saw or what they thought they saw. So meanwhile, in regards to one-way feedback, just like direct feedback, a well-written, well-thought-of feedback is going to be very helpful. Um, However, if you receive one that wasn't well written, similarly to face-to-face feedback, indirect feedback can be also takes time and effort. Even if you receive a badly written feedback that is just full of complaints and does not offer any helpful, constructive advice, consider the fact that you did something that made them feel very strongly that they want to spend time and effort to let you know. And I personally think that that alone is worth knowing. That something that you did has caused a strong reaction. Right? Even if it was badly written, it can still be useful, as long as they provide you with an observation. Right? Try and engage if that observation was positive or negative. Like, oh no, we start with the observation. Was it, uh, in your opinion, was it true or false? If it was true, then you know that that situation caused a reaction. If you feel that it's untrue, that the observation that was provided to you felt not true, that it was false, consider why that person could have misunderstood that the situation was such. Right? So you have an observation, you have your positive or negative reactions to it. The positive reactions means that it's something that you should be doing. You should do more of it. And negative reactions are things that you want to avoid, right? Badly written feedback might not be constructive, but you can let it reinforce what others might say about the specific observations that they have. Someone else might be able to explain more better on why something works and why something does not work. You take the impressions that you receive from badly written feedback to reinforce the ideas and the points of the well-written feedback, because you know that people feel strongly about a specific thing, and then someone else can contribute uh, more useful ideas on why that specific thing is good or bad. Personally, I would prefer if someone has a strong feeling about something, whether positive or negative, rather to have no feelings or no comments at all. That's how I personally feel. Let me just check on the. Remember, if you have questions, there's a questions tab. I'm not. It currently we don't have that many comments, so I can check on the comments. But if there was if you have specific questions and you put in the questions tab, it's more obvious for me if you want to have a specific question. um Mark Chua commented, asked a question: how do you know whether or not the information is too much or too little? Hmm um it really depends on the situation, isn't it? So if you feel that depends on the situation. If that observation that you want to share, let's take a quick example. Let's take a very simple example. Let's use this specific slide, right? um, this specific slide, there's an image, there's some words, and you want to share information about, for example, um, if you want to share the example that you think that this image does not fit the comment, right? So you can start by saying what you feel about that image and what you think about the words that was written and how it correlates to the information that you want to share, right? If you go on to add information from the previous slides on additional things that I talk about during on later on, or how the slides were structured, then that might be a bit too much information. So enough information to point out uh, the point that you want to make is what I'll consider just right. And I understand that this can be very hard because we're talking about very specific. Because the answer is very vague, isn't it? It's very not. It's not something that we can quantify. So as long as you can put a basis to the point that you want to make, that will be just right information. Too little information is usually when you just give out your opinions without any information to back it up. I hope that helps, Mark. If it doesn't, I hope to expand a bit more later on when we finish when we go to the Q&A session. Um, Z's mentioned that I tend to be rambling when I have negative things to say. Um, if it's a face-to-face feedback, and you start to ramble, it does throw off. It's harder to keep the attention of the other person, and it can be a bit of a detriment. So it's something that I'm glad that you realize that you have such a habit, and it's something that you can try to rein it in my opinion. Ivan has a very good suggestion to Mark on how you can ask the other person in a face-to-face situation. This is why face-to-face feedback can be very much more useful. Edwin says, "Have you had enough?" Ivan continued to give another feedback. In written feedback, you can tell the person, "Be free to contact me if you want to discuss more." Yeah, yeah. If you're worried that the information you provide is too little, this is a very good way to continue that. All right, moving on. Right, to wrap up about what I felt about one-way feedback, you want to try to understand all the observations and opinions from everyone from the feedback that you receive as much as possible from their point of view. Try and empathize, try and think from their point of view why they write it that way. Even if you don't get any useful suggestions, you'll be able to get a sense of how well or badly received a specific thing that you did. And with that, let's move on to some scenarios. Um, let's try some scenarios to illustrate what we've discussed so far. Right, the first example, um, this is a situation that you are in. You are a team leader and a large event, and one of your team members is late. Again, this is the third time you're working with this person, and the third time that he's late for the team meeting. He's not even there for the team meeting. He's not even there for the head judge meeting at the beginning of the day. So the head judge comes to you and tells you that he would like you to the head judge would like you to talk to this person and ask you to talk to this person to give the person feedback to discourage that person from being tardy so often. How would you start this conversation? Feel free to share short sentences on how you want to start with this conversation. Just before that, a quick check on the messages. Uh, yes, this is easier in person. The one-way feedback is harder. Ivan says that agreed. I try to avoid one way as much as possible. Feedback for me is a conversation and that needs to be two-way. One way can easily become a judgment, yes. Glycero starts by asking, ask why he was late. There are two things that I want you to be careful. I'm not saying that it's wrong, but there are two things that I want you to be careful when you ask a person why that person was late. Because yes, as Ivan pointed out, as why questions. Um, if you are very familiar with the person, if that person is a long time friend of you, it's easier for the other person to accept why questions. They'll be like, yeah, they'll be more likely to open up to you. But if you're not very familiar with that person, um, why question followed by an observation that can be considered negative can feel confrontational, right? Even if you didn't mean to be accusive, even if you didn't mean to be confrontational, and you just want to get more information, because that's what we want, right? We want to get more information. And when you ask a why question straight away, it can make the other person feel attacked, even if you didn't mean to. Like I said, this is not a wrong answer, but it really depends on your relationship with that person. Sorry, it's not a wrong question to ask, right? But you got, I want to stress that, who was it? It was Glycerio, right? Glycerio, you got the right idea. It's important that you know that, and it is correct. You are very right that you want to be able to get more information, and I really like that. I hope, and I hope you know that. Just want to talk about how we can better get this information, right? Um, when you we want to avoid we want to avoid the other person to feel that they are being attacked, and because make them if you put someone on the defensive, if you give, even if you didn't mean to, you give the impression that that they get the impression that they need to be on the defensive. They'll feel like they need to defend themselves, and that might get quite awkward. um, so that's one suggestion. Brian suggested ask if everything is okay if he had an emergency. The first part of the question is great. Ask if everything is okay. Um, if there's an emergency or not, we don't want to I want to avoid saying make excuses for them, but it's slightly unnecessary. If you keep the question as short as possible, it might be the best way to approach this. Like, is everything okay? And they might, and depending on how they react, you can be able to see how you want to get more what sort of questions that you want to ask someone to get more information out of the person. Randolph, but it's a good suggestion. Thanks, Brian. It's also a very good suggestion from Glicero. Thank you for helping me come up with some points to make for everyone. Randolph suggested, I noticed that you came in XX minutes after the meeting started. May I ask what happened? This is a good way to try and get information as well, because you started off with a fact. You started off with information that you have to share. Like, you are basically, you're telling this person that you're late, but in a more factual way. So I really like the way that Randolph phrased this. Instead of saying, "Hey, you're late," "Hey, you came in the meeting after 10 minutes that the meet up 10 minutes after the meeting was done. Did something happen?" This is a very good way of getting information on why that person is late. So you're asking a why question without using the word why. So that's a very good suggestion. How about Chris has a suggestion on how about showing the other person your concern by offering them food or drink as a starter, as a conversation starter. Yeah. One good way, in the same vein of how of Chris's suggestion, is you can offer the person coffee. Like, hey, you want some coffee? If you want to go grab some coffee. I haven't had enough coffee yet. It's a very good way to start a conversation, and then having coffee can help you lead your questions into, did I have time to get coffee? Like, you can, if I want to be careful and I'm using coffee as a lead in to ask questions, I could try and say something like, um I woke up late today and I didn't have enough time to get coffee before the team meeting. So I want to go get some coffee right now after the team meeting. It's like one way to like indirectly tell them, like, oh, I overslept, but I can still emphasize, I can still prioritize getting earlier to the team meeting, and then I'll go and get some coffee, which is what I wanted to do. So that's one way you can segment into a position where it's more natural to ask that person why that person was late. Calvin's suggestion is be compassionate to understand him first, give him a chance to explain himself. You're late to the meeting today. Is everything okay? Anything can we help with? Yeah. You got the right ideas, and the points that you want to make is what we've discussed so far. And I'm glad that you got the right idea. And also, since it's similar to the things that we've talked about, I won't spend too much time on this. Ace says that it also depends if he informed you in advance whether or not that person will be late. If that person did not inform you, you can ask him nicely. Yep. I believe that's what the conversations we're having right now today is. We want to try to how do we get more information on why that person was late, in a better way. Uh, Kate says that he agrees with Calvin. Yeah, right. If no one has any other better suggestions, let's talk about things that you want to avoid, right? One thing that I was hoping that I can try to bait people to say is that, why are you always late? This is something to avoid, right? The word always is something that is uncomfortable and is also provocative, right? Just like how we want to avoid saying everyone knows something, you should try to avoid always as a way to emphasize something that someone does negatively, right? Like, The next time you're unhappy with someone else, your significant other, or even your children, about something that they do, try not to use the word always, even if it feels that way. Right? Why do you always forget to wash the dishes? How is it always you don't know how to do something? Um, it's like, for one thing, it's not true. It might not be true. Like, even if it feels that way, it might not be true. And the other thing is, you're straight away painting them into a corner, and they make them feel that they need to defend themselves, right? Like, if, for example, in this situation where you say, why are you always late? This is the third time that I observe you being late in the event, in three events in a row. Why are you always late? Right? For the other person, they might feel that I'm not always late, because I might be late in these three events, but in the another event I was not late. So you immediately make them feel that that they are falsely accused, and you paint them into a negative corner, and you don't want that. It raises the confrontational level of the interaction, and it's not going to be very productive for the both of you. So try to avoid that, not just in judging feedback, but also in your personal relationship. Some comments. Mm-mm. Oh, this is a I like this. Okay. Let me just scroll up to make sure that I don't miss any comments. Eric says that I agree with Randolph, but I will not ask, because the answer will usually be an excuse. If we let the other person explain, then you all believable. We already explored this, so I'm going to move on from this. If any of these situations or scenarios that was not clear, and the points that you made was not clear, feel free to message me. I'll be more than happy to help you with it later on. Benny says I will ask him if the time of the meeting is too early. Um, that's one way to try and get the information. Yeah, indirect way of asking why the person was late. Kelvin says sometimes something is preventing you from coming in time for meetings this day. I hope I don't ponder too much in your private life. Is everything okay on your end? This is I like the way how you phrase it, to be like, I don't want to pry too much, but is everything okay? But ultimately, you are trying to move into their personal life, so it might not be. It really depends on your level of familiarity with that person. So uh, s- before you move into asking about their personal lives, consider first some other options might be a bit more effective. Edmund says that I believe it's always better to listen and know the reason why he was late, instead of reacting based on your emotions or situation. Approach the situation by asking, "May I know what happened prior to today and other days that have made you late?" Yeah, we want to get more information, and we want to be able to extract the information from them. Um, this might be somewhat a bit too direct as well, because you are directly asking, what happened, and what happened that made you late. But I like the fact that you got the idea that we want to get more information. Joel asks, I will ask them if you just came in from your flight. That's actually something that, oh gosh, I miss those days when it actually happens quite frequently, especially on Fridays, where you go to a GP and then someone comes in and like, oh, I just came in from the flight, directly from a flight. John says no. It really is a case for John in GP. Yeah, yeah. All right. This is let's move on from this. This is something that I think GP veterans will be able to get the joke immediately. All right. We have. Oh, okay. I'm running a bit late on time, so I'm gonna move on. Very quickly. Uh, You know what? Actually, we're about 5 minutes left. Unfortunately, I think I'm gonna skip these situations. I'm gonna move straight to wrapping up. I would like to request a gift from you, right? AKA, this is another way of me summarizing what we talked about so far. It will make me very happy if I can get a gift or feedback from you. If you're still unsure on how to write a feedback, let me help you. You can start with step one. Number one, your observation. What did you like? What did you not like? Let me help you with, for example, you can if you have a specific opinion about the slides. Do you have a specific opinion about the way I talk, the way I presented myself, or was there a particular discussion point? Was there a particular point that I wanted to discuss? Was it particularly enlightening? Was it particularly confusing? Was it particularly resonant? Do you really liked it, or did you really hated something that I said and you didn't agree with me? These are the observations that you can have, right? So again, the example: slides, the way I talk, or a particular point, right? Then the second step is, what do you try and try and think from my point of view? What do you think I was trying to achieve from that? What do you think that I succeeded in what was trying to do? Um, Trying to consider my perspective, guess why I did what you observe, and did I succeed? And then you end it with a suggestion. You want to make it actionable. You want to suggest a way to do it better or to avoid it altogether. This is often the hardest, and so don't worry if you don't feel that if you don't feel that you have a good suggestion. Don't worry about it. Just write it. Just say whatever you have in mind. Right. Please do more of this specific thing is a way to start. And then if you can add to that statement how I can do better on that specific thing, that's even better. And if you're able to explain why doing that specific thing in the way that you suggested can be even better, that will be just brilliant. That will be icing on the cake, right? Ta-ta-tum. And with that, if anyone has any questions before we end, type in the chat. Ta-ta-tum.
Does everyone have any question for QJ Wong?
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. If you have any questions, after this, you can reach out to me at my email, and also at social media at Twitter and Facebook at these handles. Um, I want to before end these things, I want to give a special shout out to Ivan. His articles and his amazing workshop in Barcelona that I had the good fortune to attend last year now. I've learned a great deal, including feedback, and I've tried to incorporate as much as possible. Uh, that in the form of that's more suitable for online seminar and for our Asian culture. So thanks everyone. Thank you very much for your time. Bye bye.
All right, thank you so much, QJ Wong, for the presentation. Now, the link to the feedback is being shared right now. You don't have to answer that already, okay? You have until later, or even tonight, to answer the feedback. We have other presenters joining us today, and I'll take a look, you, and I'll take a look if we can pin the link. I'll check later. QJ still there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe there's a question that I hope that you could answer.
Sure. I can do that. A question from Ace: is there a time where someone gave you a negative feedback? How did you react? I have in both my judging career and the rest of my life, I've received a lot of negative feedback. It's something that if you put yourself in public, you will get negative feedback, and that's fine. Um, uh, one of the one of the things that I'm glad I moved away from is immediately feeling that I need to defend myself. Right? This is something that is natural. This is normal. You don't have to feel bad about feeling defensive when you get a negative feedback. It's human instinct. Right? You want to be able to prove them wrong. What I'm happy to be able to say right now is that I am able to take a negative feedback and then hopefully brush off that defensive feeling as quickly as possible, and then move on to making it constructive. Try and make it useful for myself. Um, because the level that the feeling that you get depends on what type of feedback it was, right? If it's something that you are very proud of, that you think that you did very well on, and someone give you a negative feedback, it's gonna hurt. It's something that you spend a lot of time on and you're very proud of. That's gonna hurt, right? Um, the trick is, I'm not saying that I am able to brush off all negative feedback. In fact, I would say that's the opposite. Like sometimes if someone gives me a negative feedback that says that I did something wrong or badly, um, I will feel hurt. I will feel upset. What I've learned is I try not to, emphasis on try because I'm not successful all the time. Try not to immediately respond. Try not to react negatively immediately. Take stock of what the negative feedback is and see if there's anything useful you can try to get out of it, and hopefully you can take the steps that the section about how to use feedback received have a lot of advice on how you can take that negative feedback and turn it into fuel, turn it into the firewood for yourself to make yourself better, even if it's badly written. uh, Hopefully that answers your question. uh, but yeah, basically, if I get a negative feedback, it's human instinct to feel upset about it, and then I want to try to react. The way that I hope I'll be able to react is to be able to turn it into something positive, turn it into fuel to make it better make things better for myself. Um, we already in 503. Do you want me to answer the other two questions as well?
Yeah, just answer the other two questions,
I'll try to be
and
as
then
quick as
yeah.
possible. Um, Randolph questions is providing feedback different from coaching a fellow judge? So part of the process of coaching is giving feedback, right? You want to be able to tell that person how to do things better. Providing feedback is one very effective way of doing it. Quickly move on to the next question. Joel, have you ever given a feedback that you ever wished you could take back or change? All the time. I um, if it's a written feedback, I've gone back and edited. I let the other person know that I've changed um, uh, the specific wordings or whatever. Yeah, it's I definitely there are things that you think differently after you have more information. That's the one of the key points that I wanted to make today. Is the information that you receive will affect the information that you want to share, because you will feel differently based on the information that you have. Mark asks, what do you do if you get conflicting feedback? Someone might like what you did while someone else doesn't like it. Oh, believe me, I've gotten a lot of these. Um, how do I word this? How do I word this? Um, People won't like the same thing all the time, right? It's like you won't find a person who enjoys the same thing all the time. So the first thing that the most important thing I want to take away from it is that that point made people feel something. So that is a positive thing for me, right? Whether or not they feel it positively or negatively, uh, they felt something, and that's more valuable than not getting any responses at all. So one, I'll be glad about it. I'll be happy about getting conflicting feedback, even if it's conflicting, because it made them feel something. um, have it try This is the greedy part of me, right? How I if when I receive conflicting feedback like this, I want to have it both ways. I want to make the people who are happy about it happy, and keep doing the same thing. I want to keep it up. At the same time, I want to make the others, the people who didn't like it, um, like it more, or at least dislike it less. And I will try and think about how I can achieve those two goals at the same time. It's not going to be possible all the time, but I will definitely be trying to do that. So that's how I will approach conflicting feedback. Right, that was a bit longer than I was hoping to go for. Sorry about that, Ron. I think Ron was the next sessions, right? Is it? Let me see.
The next session would
Yeah,
be
Z.
with
Yeah.
Z.
Yeah, sorry
Okay.
for taking up your time, Z.